If you're ready to unlock more better days, to take control of your health, to push past your limits and unleash your full potential, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Bettle. For over 2 decades, I've worked with elite athletes and high performers, helping them optimize their bodies, strengthen their minds, and recover from setbacks. Now I'm bringing that expertise to you through the Vitality Collective podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the science, strategies, and real-world solutions you can apply right away. Whether it's enhancing your physical performance, avoiding or recovering from injury, sharpening your mental edge, or simply feeling your best every single day. With insights from top experts and thought leaders, this podcast is designed to help you take action, feel better, and live the life that you deserve. Welcome to the Vitality Collective podcast, where every day is vital.
This episode with Andrew Jenkins is another critical conversation in our emotional, social, and spiritual connection series. The reason that these episodes are so personally important to me is that for years, as a high performer, I pursued vitality. I wanted to feel amazing. I achieved everything I could achieve in my career. I achieved the highest level of education I could achieve. I was physically fit, but there was always something missing. It felt like I was always chasing something. And I wasn't experiencing true vitality because I was missing this emotional connection piece. And this is really what Andrew and I get into here. We talk about that unaddressed processing of trauma, the unaddressed emotional availability, expression, how we're culturally conditioned. Maybe it's through our families, maybe it's just through society, your sports club, your friends. It really could be anyone, but we're conditioned to come across a certain way, and it doesn't allow us authentic connection with others, and more importantly, with ourselves. And so my hope is that with these conversations that we're able to share through this platform, it gives people permission to start this process themselves of unwinding years of conditioning and starting to be more vulnerable, starting to create better connection with themselves, their families, and friends. So I really hope you enjoyed this conversation today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved chatting with Andrew. I loved the raw authenticity that he brought to the conversation. And I really hope that you can connect with it. And I hope that it sparks something in you to maybe start your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Today, I'm so excited to have our guest, Andrew Jenkins, who's going to share an incredible life story with us and the lessons that we can all learn on how to create a truly vital life. Andrew, welcome.
Hi, Jeremy. Really looking forward to this. Excited.
Yeah, well, I guess first things first, you're going to have to explain to everyone where you're from. Where is that accent?
Sunny South Wales. So just outside Cardiff in South Wales. That's where I was born. That's where I lived pretty much all my life.
Okay, and for our US audience, we're going to have a bit of a geography lesson here. Explain to us, where is Wales, and is it a part of the UK? Explain a bit of the history to me.
It's quite funny, actually. Whenever I've spoken to people from the USA or Canada, I say, where are you from? Wales. Is that in England? I say, it's not in England. It's attached to England. It's a country. It's part of the UK. And it's a tiny little bit on the left. If you look at the map, it's on the left-hand side. It's that country on the left-hand side of England. So, we are part of the UK. It's quite funny when I speak to... I went to Canada a couple of months ago in Toronto, and they were saying, are you English? Are you from England? I said, no, it's like calling you an American. Oh, so I said, no. It's like calling me English. It's like calling you an American, and they didn't like that. So, it's a separate country altogether.
Yeah, and we will definitely make sure we put subtitles on for our American listeners here to make sure we can understand everything. You've got 2 accents here.
Yeah.
All right, and so tell us a bit about the culture of Wales. Where did you grow up? What was it like for you growing up in Wales as a kid?
I'll try and paint a picture for the listeners, I suppose. And I was born into a very 1978. I know I don't look it. I know I'm a lot younger. But I was born into a very traditional Welsh family. It's a Welsh family, a very working class, lots of like terrace houses, small houses, a number of kids normally. My parents, for example, are very old fashioned. They've never driven a car. They've never sat on an aeroplane. They have the same meals every night. They watch the same things on television, the same soaps every night. They haven't got internet. They haven't got mobile phones. They're creatures of habit. They don't like change. And if they don't understand something, they think it's stupid. They very fixed mindset, to be honest. Yeah. And I grew up in that environment. So, they're lovely human beings, but the way of showing their love to me was a roof over my head, clothes on my back, and food on the table. When it comes to it, there's no emotional, nothing. My dad has never told me he's loved me to this day. My mother's probably told me once, I think. I don't know if she's ever told me. But the way they show their love is different. They got love languages. So my mother's love language, for example, is acts of service. So growing up, her life was her boys. I got 3 brothers, 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother, 9 years older than me. My oldest brother's 9 years older than me. My other brother's 7 years older than me. And my other brother's 7 years younger than me. So she had 4 boys. And she gave up her job. She had a national job in National Westminster Bank, a very good job. Right. But as soon as my oldest brother, Simon, was born, she gave up that job to be an old-fashioned housewife then. And she went and she looked after her boys. And she went to work then, back to work, when my youngest brother, Carl, was old enough to look after himself. And she went back to work then. And she only gave up work last year when she was 78 or 77. Wow. And that's because she had a bleed on the brain. So very old-fashioned, traditional family. They brought us up with good values, good morals, be respectful towards police people, older people, work hard in school and try your best and be honest and respectful, really. So, yeah, and sport in my family was massive. Like in Wales, the Welsh culture, rugby is a massive sport in Wales, and football now as well. But rugby was huge growing up for me.
Yeah. And so all 4 of you played rugby, I assume?
Yeah, and we were brought up, I suppose, what I now know is a toxic masculinity environment, not just in my household, but I was in a rugby club from 5 years of age. I was in a gym from 14 years of age. I've been a doorman, close protection. So, yeah, I was brought up like lots of people. Don't cry. Don't be a baby. The girls cry. You're suppressing your emotions. I suppressed my emotions for years and years and years, thinking I can't show feelings and emotions. I'm a man. Men don't have feelings and emotions. We're strong. We're the breadwinners. We're the strong ones. We're the protectors of the family. Yeah. And I got 3 brothers, and we're all big, strong rugby players. We all played rugby at a very good standard as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And whereabouts did you play?
Position or team? I played front row. So I played prop. So I'm quite strong. Not very fast, not very mobile and fast, but I'm the strong one in the front row of the scrum. So I played front row, and I played at a very good level. I played rugby from 5 years of age, my local club. And then I worked the way up and then played very good standard of rugby. And like lots of people in Wales, my dream was to play rugby for Wales, play on the red jersey, run on the hallowed turf on the national stadium. And that was my dream from a young age, really. And my 2 older brothers, they played rugby at a very good standard. My oldest brother played representative rugby for Wales. And my next brother then played rugby at a very good level as well. So I was watching them growing up, and we just automatically played rugby when in Wales, I suppose, in my family.
Yeah, mine was similar, coming up. I think I was at the rugby club at 4 or 5 years old, and so you start playing right away and going all the way through. And then rugby also for me sort of became synonymous with drinking, and the two were very closely linked. And it wasn't just let's go and have a quiet beer. It very quickly became how much can you drink, and that was sort of the display of how much of a man you were.
That's exactly what when I do my keynote talks. I stand on stage and my talks are very powerful and very inspiring and relatable, because I said, when you're a young boy, where do you learn how to be a man? It's watching older boys normally, either in school, in your local area, my rugby club, football club, whatever sporting club. So I said, when I was 11, 12, 13 years of age, I was watching men in their 20s, 30s, 40s say and do things. And I thought, is that what it's like to be a man? I just copied them. And the 4 measures I had what a man was growing up on the sliding scale: how many pints you could drink, how many fights you'd won, how many girls you've been out with, and how much you could bench press. And that was the 4 measures what a man was. You drunk 20 pints, he must be a tough guy. Drunk 2 pints, they'd laugh at you. Slept with 100 girls, he's a tough guy. Slept with 2 girls, you were called a virgin. So and people laugh at me, the women laugh at me when I do my talks, and I say, you can laugh and it might be funny. I said, but I can guarantee your brothers, your fathers, your uncles, your sons have been through some form of peer pressure relating to drink, fighting, strength, or girls. I can guarantee they all have. But I said, you can't have a go at me, I said, or you can, but I didn't know any better at the time. So I just copied the older people. And that's what people are doing now. Young boys now are feeling lost. And I want to be a great role model, and I am a good role model to the next generation. And I've been called on numerous occasions in this country the antidote to Andrew Tate. So I promote and talk about positive masculinity quite a lot with the younger generation, because I've been there. I've been misogynistic, I suppose. I said and done things, said things about girls because I thought it was cool and funny. I've been that person growing up, didn't show any feelings and emotions, wore a mask all my life.
Yeah.
I now know I've turned the corner. I held a mirror up to myself a couple of years ago. I didn't like the version of myself I was, and I worked on myself. And I want to show people now that you can do it a different way.
And so tell me a bit about how did that shape your identity as you went through that sort of pathway?
I walked in rugby. I was a big, strong rugby player, fighting, going out on the weekends, getting drunk. And with me, I couldn't just have one or two beers like lots of people.
Yeah.
You had to get hammered. So you go out and I don't see the point in one or two drinks. And that's why I don't drink at all now, to be honest. I'm not knocking people. I'm not going to be one of these people who says, oh, drinking's awful. If you want to drink, that's fine. But to me, it adds no value to my life whatsoever. But it's been sold to us over the last 60, 70 years by marketing and PR. You have to drink to have a good time. So with me, though, I couldn't just have one or two. I'd either go out and get absolutely hammered or nothing at all. There's no middle ground with me. So I'd just rather not drink at all, to be honest with you. And that's what I was growing up. I was walking around, work hard all week in my corporate job, work all the hours under the sun, be successful in work, targets this, target that, KPIs this.
Yeah.
And then on the weekend, get hammered. And it was on a loop every weekend. That's how British life is like, I think. And that's what British people are known for in Europe, I think, just for that sort of mentality.
Yeah. And I think that's something that today's generation won't necessarily understand, is that rugby wasn't professional then. So even though you're at a really high level, you still had a day job, right?
Yeah, like most people. I've been not that long ago, really. Used to work full time, Monday to Friday, train on a Tuesday night, train on a Thursday night with a club, then do your own training in between, and then play on a Saturday. Yeah, and that's you live for the weekend, really, and you live for the weekend in this country, and that's what lots of British people do.
Yeah, it was the same when I grew up playing. In the 90s, it was the exact same. Whether it was school or whatever it was, train Tuesday, Thursday, play Saturday, and then Saturday night, starting from that final whistle, you come back in the locker room, the pitcher of beer in the locker room, and you have your first pint then. And I remember saying often, if you're not having 10 pints, it's not even worth going out.
Exactly.
It's just culture, nothing.
And don't get me wrong, I had fun. I did have some fun when I was younger. Went on some great rugby tours. I had some fantastic memories. Yeah, but looking back, it's crazy, but you're programmed in this world. I think we're programmed from a very young age. You're conditioned. First of all, your parents condition you to fit in with society, to be socially accepted. Then you just being yourself. You think you're running around, you're laughing. When you're born, you're the truest, most authentic version of yourself. You've got no inhibitions. There's no racism. There's no anger, no hatred. Then you get programmed. Be like this, do this like your brother. Be a doctor like your dad. Be a teacher like your mum. Do this job. And you're laughing and joking. You get punished sometimes by your parents. They take their love away from you for just being yourself. You're laughing, climbing trees, playful. And you're thinking, I'm just being myself. But you don't know any different. Then you go to school, you get conditioned some more by the teachers. Do this, do that, fingers on lips. Your self-worth starts getting judged by the grades in life and the material things in life. If you get an A grade in school, the teachers love you. If you get an E or a D grade, you get written off. You're a naughty child, you get written off. And then you get told you have to go to university. All successful people in life go to university. You're thinking, I don't really want to go to university, but if I want to be successful, I have to go to university. Yeah. And then, I don't know, then you do this corporate job, then you find a job with the biggest salary possible because we're led to believe more money equals more happiness.
Right.
And then one day you wake up and you're 30, 40, 50, or you might not ever wake up at all. You look in the mirror, you think, who's this guy looking back at you? You have everything in life that you were told would make you happy. You've got the house, the car, the body, the pretty partner, but you're still not happy. You feel empty. I was one of them people because I was climbing everybody else's ladder, not everybody else's mountain, not my own mountain, not my own ladder. I get frustrated with myself every couple of months thinking, when am I going to be happy? I got everything in life that I was told from a young age would make me happy, but I'm still not happy. Yeah. I took my mask off. I'm being my authentic self. I'm doing what I want to do, climbing my ladder. And it's scary. I mean, being vulnerable and being authentic, but it's really empowering.
So let's go back to this life that you were leading, and you come up. You're in rugby. Did you make the national team? Did you play for Wales?
I didn't. Unfortunately, no. I was 21. I had to stop playing rugby then at 21 years of age. So I'm not saying I would ever have done that, but I was good. I think I had the ability to do that. whether it's ifs and buts now. So I
Yeah.
don't know, but I could have played definitely. We all played a very good standard. We all could have gone a very long way. But then my next brother up, for example, he could have gone a long way. He had lots of contracts offered to him, but he liked the social side with his mates at the rugby club, drinking on a Saturday. So he liked that, so he didn't want to lose that. So it's crazy. He could have gone professional, but he had a very good job, getting paid good money. So he didn't need the money really playing rugby, and he just did it for the fun, and he loved it. He loved playing.
And so what changed? What was it in your life that forced this change on you?
I was in a very, very serious road traffic accident. I was
Mm.
driving my car on the 20th of August, 1999. I was driving the car. There was five of us in the vehicle. My partner at the time in the passenger seat, my son's mother, my friend in the back with his girlfriend, and a girl I used to work with in the back, a lady I used to work with in the back. They hit a curb on the left-hand side, the passenger wheels, and I flipped the car to the right-hand side. So I went through the driver's door, the side window. So my legs were in the footwell of the car, and my top half, my legs, my arm, as you can see the scar, my
Oh,
arm and my head were dragged along the floor for a couple of 100 yards, was sliding along the tarmac. So when the car stopped sliding, it landed on top of me. So when the emergencies turned up at the vehicle, they were asking people in the car questions, and they said, it's too late now, he's dead. So
mm.
they said I was dead on the side of the road. I didn't die, not a ghost, I didn't die. But when the fire brigade turned up, they had to lift the car off me to get underneath the car to work on me. I had two blood transfusions on the side of the road because I think I lost 6 pints of blood. And I think you've only got 8 in your body. So I lost nearly all my blood. As you can imagine, I'm not going to go into detail because I don't know if your listeners are quite squeamish, but I had nothing on top of my head. I took all my hair, my skin off the top of my head, and I smashed my skull to pieces, my head being dragged along the floor, as you can imagine, on the tarmac. It was quite different. It was quite horrible.
Yeah.
So and then I was in a coma then. I was taken to one hospital in Wales, but there was nothing they could do for me there. So I had a police escort then down to another hospital because that's where neurology was and plastic surgery at the time. And I was taken there. But while all this was going on, my mother and father got the dreaded knock on the door from a policeman to say, you have to come with us now. Your son has been involved in a road traffic accident. And I can't imagine, I've got a son, obviously he's 24. And that's a phone call, that's a knock on the door that no parent wants. So I can't imagine what the trauma, I know what they went through now, but yeah, so then they were taken to the hospital, the first hospital I was. But as soon as they got to the hospital, they were blue lighted in the back of a police car with blue lights to the hospital. But as soon as they got to the hospital, I was on a trolley coming back out of that hospital to be taken in the ambulance to the other hospital. They weren't allowed to see me because I was in such a bad way. My dad said, can I travel in the back of the ambulance with him? But they said no, because you've got a doctor in the back, a nurse, and machinery keeping your son alive. And they said, we don't think he's going to make the trip from the one hospital to the other hospital, which is probably about 40 minutes. So I didn't think I was going to make that trip. I obviously did make the trip, but then I was in a coma for 4 weeks in intensive care fighting for my life.
Well,
So
and do you have any memories of this?
it's funny you should ask. When I woke out of my coma after 4 weeks, but I'll rewind us slightly. When I was in my coma, my family got called in on 3 occasions to say he's not going to make it through the night. He's in a bad way. They got called into the hospital. And then when I did start recovering, my family were told from the scans we've done on Andrew on your son, he's got severe brain damage. There's lots of shadows on his brain, which meant dead tissue. So they said if he wakes up, he's not going to recognize anyone. He's not going to talk, walk, or use his arms and legs ever again. So prepare for the worst, basically. So I woke out of my coma. I remember who people were. My parents were standing over my bedside, my mother and my father, obviously in tears, crying. I didn't know what had happened or where I was. They had to explain it to me. And then the doctors came round about 4 days later and said, Andrew, we're going to tell you, you're never going to walk again. But my first response to the doctor was, I guarantee I'll walk out of this hospital. And he said, you won't. My mother said, it's embarrassing. This doctor or surgeon is trying to tell you you're not going to walk again. And I'm lying in bed, in an intensive care bed, with tubes coming out everywhere in my groins. They were feeding me in my groins, in my armpits. I had a tracheotomy in my throat there, like a tube to help me breathe. So she said, it's embarrassing. The man is trying to tell you you're not going to walk again. And you're arguing with him, telling you are going to walk again. And obviously I couldn't talk. I sounded like Darth Vader, I think, because I couldn't talk properly. And you're arguing with him, telling you you will. And I proved the doctors wrong. I learned to walk again. It took me about 2 weeks to learn to walk again. But it was scary. When you got out of bed for the first time, I'd be on my back for 2 months in bed. So when she stood me up for the first time, the therapist, I literally I felt sick. So I lie back down straight away. I got lightheaded. And then when she got me out of bed, I literally could not find my legs. I couldn't remember how to walk. And I do obviously a lot of bodybuilding, train. I've done that. I've done lots of trains all my life. So I ended up mind muscle memory and all that sort of thing. So she had to physically pick my feet up, put one in front of the other. And after a couple of days, I remember how to walk again then. So yeah, it was tough. It was challenging. So as you can imagine, I had lots of operations. They took all the hair and the skin off the back of my head and put it onto the top of my head. And I had to have a titanium plate fitted in my skull. I had a big hole in my skull. And the first operation I had that night was to take all the bone out of my brain. So I had lots of bone embedded deep in my brain. So I take the bone out, which caused a big bleed on the brain on the left-hand side of the brain. So I couldn't use my right arm or right leg at the time.
Wow.
It was horrendous, basically. The injuries, the physical injuries were terrible.
Yeah, I mean the physical injuries, I mean they're obviously the ones that everyone can see, but you'd alluded to the emotional state of your family growing up and the culture in rugby in Wales, this sort of macho environment. How did the family process the emotion of this? Because the trauma for your mom and dad and your brothers must have been horrific.
They didn't process it. That's the problem. So my obviously the physical injuries were bad, but my biggest challenge lay ahead, my mental health, my well-being. And I'm not one of these people jumping on the bandwagon like a lot of people in mental health at the moment. And I back 25 years ago, there was a stigma involved. There still is now, but it's getting better. It's moving forward very, very slowly.
Yeah.
It needs to move much quicker, but we are moving in the right direction very slowly. But at the time, 25 years or 26 years ago now, it'll be this year, nothing was really spoken about. And in hospital, the NHS in Britain, I'll never hear a bad word about them. The people at the ground do fantastic work. I wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for them. And
Same.
it's not them as causing the problem in the NHS. It's the people above making bad decisions and that sort. But that's another conversation. But yeah, so in hospital, they patch you up, making sure you're okay, and then send you home. They
Yeah.
don't really prepare you for the aftermath, what's to come. And they did offer me counselling or therapy after my accident. They said, what you've been through is absolutely horrendous. You need counselling. And I was a macho, 21-year-old, ignorant, testosterone-filled kid who was invincible. And back then, 21 or 26 years ago, when somebody said counselling or therapy, you automatically think you're sitting in the corner rocking back and forth crying, or you'll see somebody. I thought I would see somebody in a white coat who judge me, psychoanalyze me, get inside my head. And I thought, I'm not seeing that. I
Right.
can't relate to them. They don't know what I'm going through. So I refused counselling.
Yeah.
We couldn't talk to each other. My family didn't talk about feelings and emotions. We just don't. We talk about boxing, rugby, football, everything else other than feelings and emotions. The word feeling and emotion in my family for a man is like a swear word. If I said
Right.
feelings and emotions, you're a man. Get on, stiff up a lip, grow, match up, get on with it. And I
Yeah.
did. So I put a shirt and tie on every day, go off to work. Behind closed doors, I hated myself. Wish I was dead. I'd lie in bed. Get out of bed every day was hard. I look up at the ceiling every day, crying my eyes out. Wish I was dead. Wish I wasn't here anymore. I was a hindrance to my family. I call myself a freak every single day. I couldn't accept my scarring, my skin graft here. I hated myself. I'd self-sabotage anything good. I had no self-esteem, no confidence. When people used to come to my parents' house to visit my parents, for example, I'd run upstairs and lock myself in the bedroom or in the bathroom because they want nobody to see me. I was a freak. And that went on I'd say horrible things to myself every single day for years. And nobody spoke about it. My parents never asked me about the accident, never asked me what happened, how I felt. We just didn't. It was brushed under the carpet, the elephant in the room in my family for 20 odd years.
Yeah. I think that there's so many things going on there, from the dissolution of your previous identity. You're a strong, athletic, good-looking guy. You've identified around that,
Thanks.
and yeah,
I kept my looks.
the plastic surgeon did wonders. Yeah,
Yeah. He's like Picasso. Yeah.
yeah. I came about that, as you age and your body changes, and so much of my identity growing up was similar to yours. You grow up playing rugby, you're a big, strong guy, and those changes in your identity are really hard to take. Now, you've gone through that on a really almost a caricature of that, where
Yeah. It
everything about your identity must have fallen apart.
was
And
awful.
yeah, and so that process of going through the complete dissolution of your life, essentially, where did picking up the pieces start for you?
God, it's a long transformational journey, to be honest. And 15 years after my accident, I actually went for counselling. The first time I went for counselling, 15 years after my accident, I didn't speak to anybody, bottled it up. And the woman I saw was amazing. She wasn't what I was expecting at all. She wasn't very clinical or she's obviously academic, but she wasn't what I was expecting at all. I thought I was going to see a medical person, really clinical and everything, but she wasn't. And after the first session, because I was sabotaging anything good happening to me, I thought I didn't deserve it. Perhaps I'd self-sabotage anything good. And then I went, I can't live like this the rest of my life. And I was upsetting people close to me, hurting people close to me. My emotions, I fly off the handle. I'm volatile, I suppose. I didn't physically hurt anybody, but emotionally, I was, say things and do things and say things and upset people. And I'm a nice person. I'm a genuinely nice person. And it's only the last couple of years I've really learned to understand my brain injury. Nobody ever sat with me and talked about my brain injury. My brain rewired itself, basically. I had brain damage. And I spoke to a neurologist not long back. She said, what you've been through, we class as a severe, catastrophic brain injury. Right. And she explained to me, I rewired my brain. So, when I think now, I got to think harder than a normal person, because my brain had to rewire itself and redirect itself. So I got to think much harder than anybody else, I suppose. And she explained like a TNT stick. So when you've got the long string on the TNT stick, yours is much, much shorter now. And I'm more compassionate towards myself and I understand myself better. But nobody ever explained that to me for 20 odd years. So it's a bit upsetting, really. If they had explained it to me, I might have helped my relationships, my family, my partners. It might have helped me more and understand myself better. But I'd worked on myself. So 15 years after, I went for counselling. And after the first session, I know what's wrong with you. And I said, what's that? PTSD and depression. She goes, yeah, you've got that. She got some of that as well. But you're grieving. And I looked at her. I said, grieving? That's when you die. And she goes, you haven't physically got to die to grieve. She goes, all grief is the emotional reaction to the loss of any kind. That's the definition. She said, people, when they retire from work, when they have to give up sport from an injury, stop playing sport, when they retire, when they have to move jobs, different departments in their office, for example, they got their team, all of a sudden they got to go to a different team. Because people, when you're tendering for a big project in work, for example, and it doesn't come off, an £8 million tender doesn't come, that's grieving. Just grieving happens all the time. And she goes, all I've heard of you today is, I used to play rugby, I used to do this, I used to do that. You're grieving your identity, loss of identity. And she said, every now and again, do ask yourself questions in your head, like, why did it happen to me? Why am I still here? She goes, yeah, I do. And she goes, you'll never have answers to them questions. You never will. You've got to accept where you are now and move on. Or it's going to eat you up for the rest of your life. There's 7 stages of grief. And number 7 is acceptance. Yeah. So I think I was trapped between number 2 and 6 probably for years. Arguing, depression, bargaining, all these different sections. I was going down a circle for a loop for years and years and years. And I'm only now moving into acceptance the last 18 months, really. I'm still work in progress. I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect, but I'm getting it. I'm better today than I was yesterday, than I was last week. And I try and move forward a little bit, 1% every day, get better.
Yeah, I think that's a really profound moment in time, the recognition that it was grief. Because I think that gives you some structure to actually process what's going on. And I don't think that that's a very common recognition at all throughout the world. I recognize it immediately in what I go through, still, I think, grieving my previous identity. So I think as a takeaway for people listening, it'd be really interesting if you've been through something, if you're struggling, to look at it and ask yourself if you are grieving. Because I think what a profound thing for you and for others potentially to go through.
When I do my keynotes, I do obviously lots of keynote talks all over the place. I do lots of big talks, big conferences. And when I do my talk, I talk about grieving, I touch on grieving, and I see lots of light bulb moments going off around the room. People thinking, oh God, I must have been grieving. And she said, people, even when they have children, grieve, she said, because they can't go out as much. They haven't got as much money. They haven't have as much freedom. So even though it's a happy occasion, you're losing your lot. You change your life, your identity. So she said, and I spoke to a lady a couple of months back. She set up a cerebral palsy Wales she set up. And she said she was diagnosed with grieving and she felt awful. Even though her son was alive, he had cerebral palsy. She was sat next to him in the counselling session, and she got diagnosed with grieving because when she was pregnant, she'd made out this life in her head that she was going to have with her son, pushing him on the swings, playing, running around the park with him and everything. So, and he's born, obviously, cerebral palsy. He can't feed himself and he's in a wheelchair. So she said she felt terrible. He's alive and sat next to her. And she said she's grieving. And she thought that was when he physically died. So even though he's alive, he wasn't what she expected. But that sounds terrible. But he wasn't born how she'd expected in her head, basically. Yeah. So she said grieving's massive. And I did a talk this week, a big talk this week to 1,000 people. And I had so many people come up to me afterwards and said, thank you so much for that. I've joined up the dots now. I changed this. I got changed this. And I was grieving my whole life. But nobody ever talked to me about it. Nobody ever identified that to me at all.
Yeah, I had this conversation with somebody just the other day about we idealize our future, right? And that example, you as a couple or, as a woman, you're pregnant, you're idealizing your future time, your future parenthood, you're idealizing the child that will come. And any deviation from that, I think there is an element of grieving your idealized vision of that you had in your head. And it's not a knock on anybody. I think it's just what we all do. You envisage this perfect dream that we've all been sold. And when it's not that, the disparity, I think, can create a lot of conflict within you. And you definitely grieve in that.
And it's hard as well. When you brought up, my parents are older. My dad's 81, my mother's 79. Well, so their generation, they brought up, it's a different world altogether now. So I brought up in this country, I don't know, it's the world thing, I think. By a certain age, you have to do a certain thing. By that age, you got to do this. By this age, you got to do this. This is like made up clock. But it's that clock was made up. I listened to a podcast a few months back, Mel Robbins, and she said that clock was designed in the early 1900s, so the average life expectancy was 50. So people had to do things by a certain age. They were going to die. Now the average life expectancy, but you're still measured against them clocks, which were done like my grandparents' clocks, for example. So their generation, but I'm still... My mother and father, in this country, we've got a blueprint of British life. So this is what my parents' life. So you get born, work hard in school, find a job, get a partner, get married, have a kid, and die. And that's the blueprint of British life. And if you don't live it like that, you're a failure, or you feel like a failure, or you feel you don't fit in with society or the norm in society. And my parents' ideal of what a son should be. Do you know what I mean? I've never been married. I've got a child. So I've done it all ass backwards, to be honest. And sometimes you think, I used to put pressure on myself. All my friends around me are all married, settled down, probably miserable and happy. And I was the only one not married. So I was putting pressure on myself, rushing things, because by 40, I got to do this. I got to be... So I was rushing things because everybody else's expectations. And I think people put pressure on themselves. Or I'm 40 odd years of age, I'm single. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just relax. Take a step back, and you're doing good in life. You're trying your best. So don't put pressure on yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, such a critical point, because you're constantly questioned on it. If you're not doing things in the normal way, everybody's questioning you on it. We don't have kids. Yeah. Every new person we meet, do you have kids? Or do you want kids? Oh, well, you still got time.
Why not ask you how you are? I'm like, when you go to conferences and all these sort of things, big events, people look at your name badge, see what you do for a living. Yeah. Why does it matter what I do for a living? Why not come up to me and say, how are you doing today? They look after, everybody wants something off someone. And like, my mum said to me months back or a while ago, when are you going to find a good woman and be happy? I said, what? Why not ask me if I am happy? I don't need it. Because my mother's generation, she was a typical old-fashioned housewife. She did everything. My dad was the breadwinner, go out and earn money. And I said, why not ask me if I am happy? I don't need. But that's my mother's. I grew up then thinking I'm a failure. My parents are ashamed of me. I'm not. Do you know what I mean? So I used to put pressure on myself until a couple of years ago. I'm not living to what they want or what they thought was ideal. Do you know what I mean? So it's funny, even a couple of months ago, she asked me that question. Like, it's funny and made me laugh.
And so you've obviously evolved, from your previous identity. You've gone through this extended period of grief. And then it seems like, quite an accelerated period after that. Once you've recognized its grief, it seems like you've been able to move through and accept where you are in life and what happened to you. What changed as you went through that acceptance piece?
That's a good question. So my life didn't change after I met that counselor, because I only had 6 sessions with a lady. It was through the bank. I used to work for lawyers, a bank manager, corporate banking. And through the company, we had 6 free counselling sessions. Just as I was scratching the surface, it finished. But one of the things she told me as well, I attach my self-worth, like lots of people do, to material things in life and my achievements in life. So it sounds funny, right, when I say it now. I thought the only way of making my dad proud is playing rugby, being the best player on the pitch, winning rugby trophies, coming home with matches. So when I couldn't play rugby anymore, I didn't think my dad loved me anymore. I couldn't think of making, I thought, how do I make my dad proud? So like he's never told me he's proud of me. He's never told me he loves me. I know he does, and he does. That's his generation. He just got to World War II, for example.
Yeah.
So the way they did show their love was it wasn't emotion. So I'm compassionate towards my parents now. They don't know how to show their feelings and emotions. So when I couldn't play rugby anymore, back 26 years ago, I thought, oh, how can I make my dad proud? My three brothers are still playing rugby as well, at a good standard. So every Sunday, my mother used to do a big dinner for all the family, for my brothers. So all the girlfriends, the children, the wives, whatever, used to go to my parents' house. All the boys would end up in one room, my dad, watching rugby on the telly or football on the telly. And they'd be talking about the game of rugby they played the day before on a Saturday. So they were saying, I played rugby yesterday, I scored a try, I done this, I done that. And I'm sat there thinking, what can I talk about? What can I contribute to this conversation? So I just stopped talking, not completely, but I'd only talk if I was asked the question. And normally the conversation was literally only about sport. It was only sport for an hour and a half at my parents' house. So the big thing for me, I lost the connection with my dad. So every game of rugby I played, he'd watch my game. He'd be standing on the touchline in the snow, the rain, the wind. He wouldn't miss a game. My brother's exactly the same. That's his love language, time. So the way he showed his love to us was giving up his time. So when I couldn't play rugby anymore, I lost the connection with my dad. The only real conversation I had with my dad, the week of the game, I talk about who I was playing on the weekend. After the game, I talk about the game. So when I couldn't play rugby anymore, I didn't really have any conversation with my father. That sounds crazy. We didn't talk about other stuff, but the only real detailed conversation was rugby. I'd see him listening to my brothers, smiling, listening to my brothers, really engaging with my brothers. And I thought, well, what can I do? I can't talk. I thought he loved my brothers more than me. I thought he didn't love me anymore. And I couldn't talk about it. I was a man. I didn't have feelings and emotions. So I didn't talk about it for years. I bottled that on for 20 odd years. So what changed for me, I tracked the man down who saved my life 18 months ago. The surgeon operated on me the night of the accident, Professor Lane. So I sent him a long email. I said, you probably don't remember who I am, because this man in Wales is very well respected in the UK, actually. He advises the government now on medicine things, so on medical things. So he's really well respected in this country. So I sent him an email, and he replied about 4 days later saying, of course I remember who you are. Your injuries will always stay with me. So I arranged to go and see him. It was a very emotional day. It's not every day you get a chance to shake the hand of the man who saved your life. I know he had a team of people around him, but he was the main surgeon. Mm-hmm. So I went to see him where he was, and I walked into the office, and he said, you're a miracle. You should have died on so many occasions, he said. I can't believe how big and strong you are, he said. It's incredible. It's amazing. We called you a miracle patient. Wow. So meeting him made me realize how lucky I was. And I hearing it from the horse's mouth, I suppose. This guy, he's operated on thousands of people. So for him to say that to me, I thought, God, yeah. So I could either use my trauma. I was walking around with a chip on my shoulder, resentful, angry, pissed off, excuse the French. For years, I lost my rugby career, my looks and all this sort of thing. So I thought, right, I can either walk around for the next 40 years, 50 years like that, or I can use my trauma for good. It's called post-traumatic growth, growing off the back of a trauma. It's like the Paralympians, for example. Yeah. They might have lost the leg in Afghanistan. Don't get me wrong, that's awful. But now, they're in the Olympics, winning gold medals, being awarded MBEs in Britain. They're doing great things. So it's like me now. I can either use my trauma, I use my trauma for good. So I'm helping inspire thousands of people in this country because I think my story is very relatable. Yeah. I'm not some like academic or some guru or some guru. I'm just a normal guy sharing my story. But that's what people tell me they like. I'm relatable. I'm normal. I'm passionate. I'm raw. I'm down to it. And that's what people like about it. They can relate to it. Yeah. So that's what I'm meeting that man. Maybe that's what changed the corner for me, really. That's what the final piece in the jigsaw for me was meeting him. So that's why I do what I do now.
Yeah, I think that's the part that needs to be acknowledged, that the post-traumatic growth. The growth is never worth the trauma, but once you've had the trauma, it's yours to grow from. And I think that's the radical acceptance part of this, where you do progress through that. And I think what you've done with that now, and I'd love to talk about the success that you're now experiencing and the vitality in your life. When did that then, so after you've met with the surgeon, when did that turn into more of a service-oriented mindset where you can now use that trauma to help people?
I wanted to start sharing my story on social media. But I never used to use social media really until then, but I wanted to start sharing my story because a lot of my friends are rugby players, gym people, sports people, doormen, the worst people for showing up showing their feelings and emotions. We got this persona we got to wear. We're tough, we're strong, we can't show feelings and emotions, we can't be vulnerable. So I wanted to start sharing my story. So I sat my parents down for the first time ever and spoke about the accident 24 years after it happened.
Wow.
So I sat my parents down on a Friday afternoon. I said to my parents, I want to talk about the accident. What do I want to talk about that for? I want to talk about it. Just why? We don't want to talk. I said, I want to talk about it. So we had this weird conversation. So we talked about it, and they said to me, "You changed. You're a different boy." I said, "What do you mean?" Because I'd done a lot of reading and studying. I qualified as a neuro-linguistic practitioner, NLP. So I sort of knew they wouldn't have any answers to my questions. But I said, "Tell me, what do you mean? Are you miserable? You're moody. The old Andrew's gone." So I said, "It's funny." I said, "Whenever you speak to anybody outside of my house who knows me, people I've worked with, friends, they say, oh, Andrew's fun. He's a life and soul. He's talkative." My parents used to look at them and say, "Andrew, he's really quiet and moody." I said, "It's only when I come in my house. Because I secluded myself. I excluded myself from my family, I suppose. But I said, I didn't think Dad loved me anymore. Oh, don't be so stupid. Of course he loves you." I said, "I know, but I didn't think it at the time." I said, "I thought my brothers are better than me." "Well, we love you all exactly the same. I said, "I know, but I didn't think it at the time."
Yeah.
So we had this really, it wasn't that long, really, an hour conversation probably. But then the best conversation I had was with my son on a Saturday morning after that. I sat him down he was studying university, studying sports science. And I sat him down in a coffee shop in Cardiff, the capital city of Wales. And I sat him down. I said, "I want to talk about the accident and what I want to do now. Because my talk on social media includes everybody else. So I didn't want people to find out third party of somebody else. So we had a 4.5 hour chat about everything, about drink, drugs, steroids, girls, everything. We had an open conversation. And I say to people now, I said, you can't stop your children doing anything at all. I said, you can't. I said, all you can do is try and guide them the right way, tell them right and wrong, and let them make a decision. I said, if you try and stop them, they'll do it behind your back. I said, I'm not condoning anything at all. I'm genuinely not condoning anything at all. So before anybody thinks so, I'm not condoning anything at all. But I said, we had a chat. But I said, the worst thing you can do, if your son or daughter comes to you to tell you something, you might not like what they're going to tell you, but the worst thing you can do is shout to them. Because if you shout to them, the chances of them coming to you again then are gone probably. Yeah. But I said, me and my son have got an open conversation now. So if he's got any problems, he's struggling, he'll talk to me about anything at all. Like I can't talk to my parents about anything. I can't talk to them about money. They don't get it. They don't understand it. And they'll have a go at me. They'll blame me for things. They're so judgmental. But me and my son got an open conversation. So we had a 4.5 hour chat about everything. And at the end of that conversation, I told him I loved him for the first time in his life.
Wow.
It took me 22 years to tell my son I loved him. So I was bringing him up exactly the same as I was being brought up. Mm-hmm. I look back, I cried so much over the last couple of years after I'd done a lot of work and analysis and looking back and reflecting, because rugby, for example, again, he played rugby at a good standard. So he come off the field after the game sometimes, right? And as a sportsman, if you've had a bad game. You don't need people to tell you about a bad game. He's had a good game, for example. He scored a try, kicked all his kicks. He's outside half or centre. For the people who don't really watch rugby, that's the fancy boys in the back who score the points, the pretty boys. Right. So he was one of them. So he come off the field. He could have had a great game. I'd always find the one thing he didn't do. So he come off the field. The one person he wants to be, proud of him is his dad. I'd always say, he missed that tackle, missed that kick. Right. In my head, I think I pushed him to be better all the time. But really, all I'm telling him is he's never good enough.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow. So in my head, I'm thinking I'm pushing him to do better, be the best he can, and pushed him. But really, I'm telling him he's never good enough. So I bet in his head, he's thinking, no matter what I do, I'm never good enough for my dad. Mm-hmm. And one match, right, I really got upset about this. He was 14 years of age, and the game was terrible. He wasn't playing very well. The team wasn't playing very well. I got in my car and left the game before the game had even finished. So after the match, the one person he wanted to talk to, be consoled by, is his dad. So he said, he was talking to people, where's my dad gone? Oh, he's gone. How bad is that? How terrible is that to my son? I broke my heart when I thought about that. I mean, me and him have spoken about this since, and he said, yeah, I remember that. And he's a great kid, honestly. I'm so proud of him. And he said, yeah, I knew what you were trying to do, he said, but yeah, I knew what you were trying to do is to get better and all that sort of thing. But I went about it the wrong way. It's so much, I could have done it such a different way. I could have praised him. I done a lot of coaching, training that now. So I could have praised him first. Then we could have sat and talked about it properly rather than doing the way I did. Like, you coached people for years and that, so you understand it. But I did it the wrong way. I was quite passionate and quite raw and old school generation. But and
Yeah.
looking back, I wish I'd done it a different way now. But hopefully, if he has his children, he'll do it a different way, I suppose, and better than I did it.
Yeah, you can only do what's modeled to you, I think, without formal education. And that's, that there isn't a course on being a parent, right?
No,
You you parent as you were parented, and then you've had that breakthrough, and now he can benefit from that, moving forward. But I think just the fact that you've had the conversation has got to be huge for him.
I told him I loved him. I hugged him and I said, I'm proud of you. I don't care what you do for a living, how much money you got, what you do. I don't care if you play rugby. I'm proud of you. So I've broken that generational cycle in my family now. So he knows I'm proud of him, regardless if he plays rugby, regardless what car he drives, regardless what he does. And I said, all I want, as long as you're happy, that's all I care about. So I say to people now in the audience, I'm talking, I say, don't pressurize your kids. I said, they'll end up doing something to keep you happy. And how bad would you feel if your son is or daughter stuck in a job for 20, 30 years and they did that to make you happy? I feel terrible. If my son turned around to me in 30 years' time and said, I was a doctor, I was a barrister or a teacher, I didn't enjoy it, but I did it to keep you happy. I'd feel terrible. And I think people put so much pressure on their children. I hear it now. I say to the children now, what do you want to do for a living? I want to be a doctor. Why is that? Well, my mother's a doctor. Right, but what do you want to do? What do you do? I want to be a teacher. Why? Well, my dad's a teacher. I said, but what do you enjoy doing? I say to youngsters now, I say, find something you're passionate about and try and monetize it. And I said, forget about the money first of all. Forget when you're young, you've got no commitments or overheads. Just do something, work hard, chase your dream, and eventually you'll monetize it. It'll be like you're never working again. You're doing something you love and enjoy for yourself, not to keep your parents happy.
Yeah. I love that where you started was with family, as you start becoming more public. And then, once you've got this all aligned with your family,
Mm.
your social media presence and then your public presence
Yeah.
seems to have accelerated, exponentially over recent years.
But there was a program, it's in America actually as well, called the Traitors. And they approached, I had a page on Instagram because I wanted to start talking about mental health and well-being. Ultimately, I said I want to change the world. And I think I can. I'm big enough and strong enough I can do it. And I want to help as many people as possible. All I want to do when I lie on my deathbed, I don't know when that's going to be, hopefully a long time away, I want to close my eyes when I'm in a difference to the planet. I've got a purpose in life now. I was meeting that doctor, giving me my purpose in life. That's the reason I go to bed every day. I get tired sometimes, I'm down. But when I get messages of people all the time saying how much I'm helping them, that's what drives me and motivates me. So yeah, so I had a message on the weekend, for example, of a 16-year-old boy. He was going to end his own life. He was going to take his own life. He decided not to after watching my videos and watching how I can turn my life around. He saw that. I had another message of somebody who's just been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer yesterday. But she said what keeps her going through her chemotherapy is my motivation, my videos. So, that's what keeps me going. And I know I help so many people. People I don't even know probably. It's probably I don't hear off many of them. But I had a message on my Instagram page back about 18 months ago for a program called The Traitors saying, your story looks amazing. You're looking like a nice guy. Do you want to apply for this show? Do you want to come on the show? And I said to my partner at the time, I said, I don't care about being recognized. I'm a humble guy. I'm from a council estate, where I come from. So I don't care about being recognized in the street I'm not into all that material stuff. But I said I could get a good platform and a profile and connections I got now to help change the world. Like
Right.
before I had this, I had a couple of hundred followers, if that. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any famous people. But now I know so many people. I wouldn't be talking to you probably if it wasn't as that. So going on that show had the result I wanted. I want to help as many men as possible, women as well, but I relate more to men because I don't want people to suffer in silence like I did for 24 years. And I want to help ultimately reduce the rates of suicide, which are
Mhm.
disgusting at the moment.
Mm.
700,000 people, men a year, commit suicide, or sorry, take their own life. And that's disgusting. And it's because I think sometimes they can't open up and talk. They can't
Yeah.
show their feelings and emotions.
Yeah, it's a hopeless place to be. And I think that it is, when you look at men, really from their early 20s up, and you start losing purpose, you're lost. I do think that there isn't a place or a model for us to be able to get that out, into the just off your chest. I think I've been quite fortunate. I moved over to the States when I was 22, and I met my
my wife, and she encouraged me to get into counseling, it was a very American thing, at that point in my life, but I think I was very fortunate quite early in my life to be able to get into therapy and be able to talk about this. And it's ongoing. We still see our therapists actually together now,
Yeah.
once a week.
I, I say that to people. So I say that to people. I say, we look after our physical health. A lot of us look after our physical health. We pay a PT sometimes, so £60 an hour or how many dollars, $800 an hour, whatever it is to pay a PT. We look after our physical health. So why not look after our mental health?
Yeah.
My mental health is stronger. I'm a strong guy, but my mental health will beat me every single time. If my mental health's not right, my physical
Yeah.
health's not right. When I go to the gym and I'm struggling, I have a half-hour session in the gym. I leave there not even sweating. I think I was a waste of time. If I'm arguing with my partner, if I got something going on in my life, I'm in the gym and I'm thinking of everything else first. So once my mind is right, my gym is good. So
Yeah.
I say to people, look after your mental health as well. They go hand in hand. They're not separate things. And I talk about like the gut microbiome, the friendly bacteria. I did a talk yesterday and I said to people, you've got like 12 nerves in the back of your neck, 11 go up into your brain, one of them in the vagus nerve goes into your gut. So when people talk about, it's all the rage at the moment, friendly bacteria, gut microbiome, but nobody really knows why. So I said, the vagus nerve communicates all the time with your brain, constantly sending messages to your brain. So no coincidence. If you eat junk food, sugary rubbish, your mood is low. And you're having sugar spikes, insulin spikes, crashing all the time. I said, there's no coincidence if you have a binge on the weekend. I said, look, I'm not saying I don't have a takeaway, but 95% of the time, my diet is good. I eat
Yeah.
whole foods with one ingredient, a potato and apple. I eat whole foods, not 19 processed crap and sugar in the back of it. So try and eat foods with the smallest amount of ingredients as possible. And that's why I've always got lots of energy. Obviously, sleep is really important, but I feel good all most of the time. But if I ever do I don't drink, but if I ever did have a binge or a takeaway, my mood is low for about 2 days afterwards. I'm not in a bad mood. I'm just a bit lethargic and a bit whatever. I'm low. My training goes out the window. So I say to people, look after your fella. And nobody's coming to save us. People out in this country, in Britain as well, there's a blame culture in this country. Everyone wants to blame everyone. And we're really reactive. We're not very proactive. We never do anything about something when it's gone wrong. When somebody's trying to take their own life, we'll sort it out. When somebody's morbidly obese, we'll give them Ozempic injections. No, that's wrong. We need to give them the tools years before that to stop them getting that far. I said, that's not changing behavior. That's not changing cultures or behaviors. That's just papering over the cracks, basically, or putting a plaster on a massive cut. I said, when that person stops injecting, what are they going to do? Go back eating crap food again? I understand it's good for people who are morbidly obese who need to have an operation to save their life. But I know lots of people out there taking it, but not in bad shape, just to get a six-pack, just starving themselves. It's terrible, honestly.
Well, it is, and I think that's the whole premise of our company. When I got into sport, it was wait until the athlete gets injured and then rehab them. And that never sat right with me. Why don't we stop them getting the injury in the first place? And now
100%.
I'm out of sport, we're applying that to healthcare. And we're currently sitting in a model trying to eliminate chronic disease when your doctor isn't allowed to treat you until you get it. So how are we going to eliminate it? And
It's crazy,
so
this country. Yeah.
yeah, the same goes for mental health. I do think we wait in so many instances until we're in crisis before we start taking action. And so for
Yeah.
you, Andrew, as you think back to that younger version of yourself laying in the hospital bed, what advice would you have for him and for other people who go through something in life, and it doesn't have to be even that dramatic as
No,
what you went through,
no.
who think their life will never be the same again, and in certain instances maybe it won't.
I wish I'd opened up and talked a lot sooner than I did. Because I bottled things up for 20 odd years. And I thought being vulnerable is a weakness, but it's not. Everybody talks about vulnerability, Brené Brown, but it's true though. Vulnerability we think is a weakness in this country and is in the world, I think, but it's not. Being vulnerable is really brave and courageous because you're being your true authentic self. So I wish I'd been my true authentic self years ago, not giving to peer pressure, not going out drinking, not doing this sort of thing. I wish I'd been I've been courageous enough and brave enough to do what I want to do and be strong and also talk to people and opened up and spoke to people a lot sooner, I suppose, but also being compassionate towards myself. I didn't really understand what compassion meant a couple of years ago. I understand what empathy means and that sort of thing, but compassion, I say to people, now what's compassion? They don't know. I say, well, you're treating yourself as you treat other people. Don't be too hard on yourself. You can only do what you can do with the tools you got available at that time. And you're a product of your environment a lot of times. You've been brought up in a different way. Don't be hard on yourself. I was brought up in that environment, so I didn't know any better at the time. It's only when I held a mirror up to myself a couple of years ago, started working on myself, that I started changing. So I say to people, don't be hard on yourselves. Don't beat yourselves up. You will get bad days, but just keep working. What I try and do is surround myself with good people who will go in the right direction as me. Because in life, we got batteries, we got hoovers. The batteries pick you up and charge you, make you feel great. The hoovers suck the bloody life out of you. And I've got some hoovers around me, and I try and spend little time as possible with the hoovers. So surround yourself with good people, go in the right direction, work hard. It's not all unicorns and rainbows. That's bullshit. And people tell me they like me because I'm raw, honest, and it's not all unicorns and rainbows. I get bad days exactly the same as everybody else. All I am now is I'm much more self-aware now, and I know my triggers. And also, I got coping mechanisms I can implement quite quickly to stop me spiraling. Whereas years ago, I'd spiral, I'd be down in a bad place for days, if not weeks, because I didn't know how to get out of it. No, I do breath work, I do meditation, nature is so important. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we got a huge problem nowadays, is because I'm on a screen talking to you, for example, but we're so much on our screens all the time. I listened to a book a couple of weeks ago called The Dose Effect. It stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And he said years ago, 85% of our time was spent outdoors. Now it's less than 7%. So I think there's a direct correlation. We're sat indoors on screens all the time. Like when I go out walking in nature, I'm in present moment. I don't take my phone with me. I just listen to the birds, listen to nature, listen to the trees and rivers. And I feel amazing. And I did a big walk a couple of months back. I walked 1,200 miles for charity.
Yeah.
To be told I couldn't walk 25 years ago, now walking that is a huge achievement. When I walked for 42 days, 35 kilometers every day for 42 days. And my average resting heart rate was 72 before I started. Within 2 weeks, it went down to 51. And it stayed at 51 for 3 weeks. And it's gone back up to 72 now, 71 again now. It just goes to show how much stress, pressure, driving, work, money. When I was walking, it sounded a bit selfish. I didn't think of anything. I didn't think of work, didn't think of money, relationships, nothing. It was me, my footsteps, mountains, forests. It was beautiful. If I could bottle up that feeling, I was priceless, honest to God. My mind stopped racing the first time in years.
Yeah. I think that's you've said something really important there. It might sound selfish. I think that is what holds a lot of people, certainly, myself, back from taking time to do the practices that restore you. Because we leave the home on our own to go and do something like that, go to the gym, do some breath work, and we want to do it on our own. But there's almost a stigma to that. You said the word, like, it's selfish. Yeah. And I think that's a mindset that we've got to change, is that you can't help others. And you left a great note on our group chat the other day. You left us a voice note saying about filling up your cup. And when we get depleted, we can't give ourselves to others. And so for me, it's selfish, isn't it? We're doing that so that we can go out and give more to others.
It's easy done though, and it's easy. If you've got a big heart and you want to help and your purpose is helping, like my conversations I have normally, I don't talk about anything uplifting. I get lots of messages of people saying they've got cancer, been told they'll never walk again, their son's got depression, try to take his own life. So I'm taking on so much stuff, much all the time. I got to be careful every now and again. I get it wrong. I had a wobble a couple of weeks ago when I was after that group chat message I left, I think, because I was crying. I was bursting into tears. I was driving my car. I was in London. I was just crying for no reason whatsoever, because the things that made me me, the pillars that made Andrew, going to the gym, health eating, walking in nature, went out the window for about 2 or 3 weeks. I was driving everywhere, helping everybody else. I was just burnt out. I was just depleted. So I said, no, I've got to put the brakes on, stop. So every day now, I treat myself every day as if a customer. So every day I do something, at least an hour or two, for myself. Yeah. I went for a walk this morning, for like a 10K walk this morning up the mountains. It was beautiful. I felt amazing. I come back to my desk. I feel fine. I feel okay now. Yeah. But most people open their eyes in the morning. They read the papers. They read the news. So straight away, they're on the back foot straight away. They go on their laptop. They haven't done nothing for themselves. So they haven't set themselves up for the day. Positive, get their vibrations, their frequency, feeling good in the morning. My partner, for example, she loves the news. Opens her eyes in the morning, turns her alarm off her phone, reads BBC News, which is a load of nonsense. Looks at the news, war in the world, medical, stabbings. And then she puts the news on downstairs. I said, what are you doing? Stop watching the news. I said, stop it. listen to some meditation for 10 minutes in the morning, half an hour. When you open your eyes, I put my headphones in normally. I listen to meditation or frequencies, or I do something, and I start the day and I'm good on a front foot then. So when I have got challenges in the day, I can deal with it much better.
Well, Andrew, I think, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for this conversation. You said throughout, but it has been authentic and raw, and we really appreciate it. And to wrap up, just with those really practical tips that people can take away today, that the most important thing about our podcast is that people have stuff that they can do today. Yeah. So, number one, for me, as you've said, is if people are struggling, you gotta find your community. You've got to talk.
Massive, yeah.
Yeah.
Humans are built for connection. We're wired for connection, aren't we? And like, I got on one hand, probably people I can ring at any time of day. They won't judge me. They won't try and fix me. They just sit in the trenches and listen to me. I can ring them anytime. And that's a really important to have a support network around you. Like I said, if you want to help somebody today, if somebody's listening to this or watching this, turn your laptop off, turn your phone off, and get out to go for a walk. Go for a walk. A 20-minute walk in nature is scientifically proven. You get your serotonin, your endorphins. You feel great. And you come back to your desk or your house and you feel much better. So if that's one little tip, just get out to go for a walk.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Andrew, again, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. Yeah, this is.
Thanks for having me.
Well, what a conversation with Andrew Jenkins on resilience and personal growth after trauma. Here are 3 key takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, grieving isn't just about death. Any major life change, including loss of identity or health, can involve grief. Recognizing it is the first step to healing. Number 2, vulnerability is power. Opening up and asking for help is a courageous act that fosters connection and growth. Number 3, start small, start now. Daily walks in nature, mindfulness, and emotional honesty can radically improve your well-being. You can learn more by following Andrew on Instagram at Andrew Jenkins Official, going to his website, andrewjenkins.co, and on LinkedIn at Andrew Jenkins. If today's discussion resonated with you and you're looking for ways to integrate emotional intelligence, personalized strategies, and long-term vitality into your life, we would love to help. At Vitality Collective, we've built these principles into a comprehensive system designed to optimize your health and performance at any stage of life. If you're ready to take action and see how this approach could work for you, visit www.vitality-collective.com to learn more. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.